So I have another color filter animation where I take a still image and feed it through 100 frames of a color spectrum, basically the full color spectrum of a photo program that I have, which just so happens to have 100. It's a spectrum separated into 100 pieces, and by doing that, I'm able to bring out different parts of the pattern that I don't see in stillness. And depending on the pattern, they reveal different things. It's worth noting, because I mean, I've mentioned before that a lot of my patterns are made from Archimedes spirals, and I haven't really documented much of that. And when I first made these patterns several years ago, I had a bit of a vacation, and for days I just sat around, kind of taking one image, and this was the image. Minus all the colored pieces. So essentially this was the image, minus the colored pieces, though I've made images with those, and I've referenced that. One of my last videos had an image made with these things, but basically it was this photograph, and many of the animations I made came from this photograph, which I then manipulated. This was a photo versus a scan. Had I been a little smarter, one, I would have made this image correctly in the first place, but I didn't. It's a little bit off, and I mentioned that in a previous video. How, as you can see, like this line, and like from here to here, and from here to here, from here to here, it's a bit off because I made a mistake, and the accumulated error curled this a bit too tightly. One of these triangles is not a right triangle. Maybe this one? But anyway, this was the image I used, and then from manipulation to manipulation, like I said, it was an Archimedes spiral. So let me see if I can reference that a little more completely, and for your viewing pleasure while I find my notes. Yeah, so this was one of my first notebooks from several years ago, and in a lot of ways, when I knew less, I was able to achieve more. It's kind of weird how that works, but like I have no idea what I did now, because I forget what I do. Anyway, this is some Hemachandra stuff, and I'd heard that Hemachandra numbers are kind of like the father of Fibonacci numbers, and I did some work trying to trying to figure that out. But I was working on a lot of different things at the same time, and I came upon what I call my pudding graph. And this is my ABBA, working on my ABBA, and certain manipulation of it, but this was an unsatisfactory piece of this particular pattern. Here it's worth noting that maybe in a sphere, you know, like octahedrons and cubes, this is unrelated, but like octahedrons and cubes in some kind of root 2-ness, like don't touch at all. So like maybe an octahedron and a cube, or a square and a square, like maybe they don't go from here to here to here, but here to here to here, and you're dealing with kind of different sizes, things that look like they touch but don't touch. That's just a side note. Oh no, wrong folder. Well, let's see. For more of your viewing pleasure, will I find the right folder? Let's see. Give this a different look. Give that on for, try that on for size. All right. Okay, so this is the other part of the folder. Let's see if I can find it here. This was one of my first projects, which got me reinterested in math and geometry back in like 2013. I'll let you guess what I was trying to do. The impossible, of course. This was my development of my ABBA pattern. I'll probably include that in another video, but it's worth noting. Yeah, this is where I first started developing the pudding graph, as I call it. I realize it's kind of a juvenile effort, but they say you gotta be young at heart, so. But I was kind of working on a lot of these ideas. I was kind of big on base 12 and the idea of Ta at the time, and a lot of it came down to like cyclicity versus linearity at that time. Man, it's gotta be here. Oh, there we go. So yeah, this was more developing the pudding graph, which basically is an array of inverse curves, which I've showed some of before. Actually, let's see. Yeah. So this is the pudding graph 2.0, but this was the first one. This is more of like a 3D version of it, but yeah, for some reason I've had a strong feeling, you know, this was in the midst of it was like a month or 2-3 month thought, and I guess once you get into it, it's really, really simple, but I I can't find a way to like formalize it. But it's pretty near and dear to my heart, I guess. But yeah, this was just prior to that development, and I was like doing it at home, doing it on my lunch break. And this is kind of where the development of my pudding graph and the development of the Archimedes spiral came together for me. And you know, it's not my idea. It's, again, from a lot of different videos that I was watching. That's mostly how I learned, was from watching videos. In the past, I used to say I read quite a bit. And I used to read a little more than I do now, but this more came from videos. And I've yet to fully develop the Archimedes spiral in ways that I've seen online. Mine's a little more of a guessing game, or an informed guess, but and then as far as you know, just full disclosure and non-readingness goes, I have not read this book. I've not read this book. I read like maybe a few words of this one and a few more of this one. Kind of one of those guys who reads like collage quotes, and that's kind of my way of learning. Anyway, to make a long story long, you know, I went from here. Well, I did have another one that I developed from there. I'll see if I can find that. Well, I perhaps give you something else for your viewing pleasure. See if I can find that. Yeah, okay. So, let's see. Somewhere in here. Yeah, there I was going for two. Yeah, this one is 7 of them. And for a long time I was thinking that I get confused. See, I was thinking this was 7, but that's really 11. 11 and 11. But this one's 7, 7, 7. 3 of them. But my pictures are organized a bit differently, as I'll get to. This I was. See, that's the thing. I don't know what I was thinking, because at the time, it's almost like I had a clear thing in my mind, because I just kept thinking about the same thing for days. I don't have that clarity now. This is my first foray into hyperbolic geometry, universal hyperbolic geometry, which probably is like, yeah, I can't even comment on it. But yeah, so then this was my next Archimedes spiral, and I was doing that at the same time. And then I made this one. And I was so impatient, or so excited, that I just started making image after image after image, and now several years later I've made, 5,000 images, all pretty much generated from this picture, which I then manipulated and overlapped in particular ways. And I guess the thing I'll say is that this isn't my center, nor is this my center, nor is this my center in the pictures that have come after. Though I made many images, eventually what I began to do was, in my mind, I guess I started wrapping them around like a cube or an octahedron. And there was a particular manipulation I made that I can't quite get to the bottom of, but which made sense at the time. Yeah. But in particular, like when I got here and I started seeing some of the structure, and I was just overlapping things and mirroring things and rotating things, trying to see what I could come up with. And I was so excited. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And I call it flipping over stones. It's kind of like when I was a little kid in junior high. I went to a buddy's camp. It was a friend of mine's parents' camp, and one day we went crawdad fishing. Not necessarily something I endorse, but something I guess I can't endorse. I mean, I don't know. Should we eat crawdads? I mean, I don't really know. But at the time, we were looking for them, and when you first start, you flip over stones, flip over stones, flip over stones, and then after even several hours or several minutes or whatever, you start to see the pattern of, okay, maybe they're behind, maybe this is a better stone to flip over, maybe this is a better stone to flip over, and then you can start making choices. But at the beginning, you just flip over everything, trying to see what you can find. And that's what I was doing here. A lot of these aren't coming very... A lot of these are coming through very clear on the video, but I remember seeing like things up in here and thinking, wow, awesome. Up in here, this structure, this is when I started feeling like, and just, forgive the theatrics of it, but I started feeling Da Vinci Code-ish. Like I was really coming on to something. And maybe I was. I've still yet to figure that out. I guess that's not true. I guess I have stumbled onto something. It's just it's still obscure and amorphous, and it's this nebulous cloud of ideas that I hope is condensing, but sometimes it wanes as well. So it's hard to say for sure. But these were a lot of the first patterns that I came upon, and I manipulated them, and so on and so forth, until I came to this pattern. And this is where I start to not really, because this isn't exactly like a perfect hexahedron. It's a little bit off, but in my mind, I was working it in a certain way, and I can't remember exactly what I did. And of course, my drawing's off anyway. And this is when I first started using my photo program to start trying to overlap images, and my centers weren't always exactly perfect. But again, that kind of makes me wonder about the nature of the mistakes I made and what subconsciously or superconsciously informed the decisions to make the particular mistakes I made. And then I shrunk the whole image and put it in the center. And I messed around with that for a while until I felt like it was right, until it seemed like it matched up correctly. So in some of my animations, specifically the ones where I've made, and you can see it better later on, but like I make these loosely spectrum frames, and what I did was just kind of took spheres of color and placed them over this already existing form, kind of filtered them over, not in a perfectly mathematical way. Then I took the reverse image, the negative image of this, placed the two over each other and rotated them in opposite directions. And then there was another one where, you know, I took the same, I did it in two different ways. Like one I did opposite colors in opposite directions, and then another one I took like the same values with opposite spectrums and shifted them in different directions. And in one case, the pattern annihilates at 0 or 360 degrees, and then in the other one it doesn't. And those are on my channel now. I forget the names. I forget the names of my videos pretty much after I make them. Yeah, so. But anyway, I just thought it was worth noting that this is, you know, that's essentially where these patterns come from. And I think it's pretty, I think